Sometimes giving a man a chance is really just giving him another opportunity to waste more of your time. And with that wasted time comes damage. Damage to your heart, your peace, your self-esteem, and ultimately your life. That damage isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's silent, happening slowly, day by day, until one day you wake up and don't even recognize yourself. One of the most common struggles I see in women today is dating fatigue. It's real, and it is one of the most emotionally draining experiences to go through. Dating fatigue isn't simply being tired of meeting new people. It's a deep exhaustion. It's emotional burnout. It's when you're so worn out from trying, from hoping, from giving chances, that you don't have the strength to engage anymore. Even when a potentially good man comes into your life, you feel numb. You don't have the energy to open up, to participate, or to show up as your best self. And this happens for one major reason. Too many women allow men to linger longer than they should. You stay in situations that should have ended after 2 weeks, but they drag on for 2 months. What should have ended in 2 months drags on for 2 years. And for some, it becomes 5 years, 10 years, children involved, and a wounded heart that doesn't know how to heal anymore. That's how dating fatigue becomes emotional paralysis. You begin to feel stuck, not because you don't know what to do, but because you no longer have the strength to do it. And it all starts in the talking stage. The talking stage should be a temporary period where two people are getting to know each other, where they are discovering compatibility, openness, honesty, and vision. It's a stage where two grown adults evaluate whether they can move toward a real commitment. But for many women, the talking stage becomes a relationship without a title, without direction and without progress, a period where emotional attachment forms without actual clarity. And that attachment becomes powerful, because emotional bonding can feel like love even when it's not love. It activates hope, fantasy, and imagination, even when reality is showing something completely different. So the real question becomes, when do you cut a man off in the talking stage? When do you stop trying? When do you choose yourself again? The first sign is this: when there is no attraction. And I know modern culture loves to encourage women to look past looks, to be less picky, to give a nice guy a chance. And while yes, looks should not be the only foundation of a relationship, attraction absolutely matters. You need chemistry, desire, magnetism, that internal pull toward the person you're with. Everyone has a different taste. Attraction is not about perfection or society's standards. It's about how you feel. You are the one who has to live with the relationship, not other people, not social media, not your friends, not your mother, not your pastor. And attraction is not only physical. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes it's energetic. Sometimes you meet someone who does not fit the traditional mold, but something about them draws you in. That spark is what matters. But many women convince themselves to stay when the spark is missing, hoping it will appear later. You push yourself to try harder. You tell yourself to wait and see, thinking maybe one day you'll feel something. But what happens instead is emotional attachment without desire. And desire is the lifeline of intimacy. Without attraction, you can't show up affectionately. You don't desire physical connection. You don't feel excited to commit. You struggle to give emotionally. You become resentful. You feel trapped instead of chosen. That's when the relationship becomes work, not joy. You start performing instead of connecting. You feel guilty instead of fulfilled. And from a Carl Jung perspective, ignoring attraction becomes a battle with your own shadow, the buried truth you hide from yourself, the part of you that says, I don't want this, but you silence it to appear kind or patient. Jung believed that suppressing internal truth leads to emotional fragmentation, the opposite of individuation, which is living authentically, whole, and aligned. You can try to build a relationship from kindness, from pity, from logic, but you cannot build one without desire. If attraction is missing completely, if you know in your soul that you are forcing it, then the situation must be either friendship or nothing, but not romance, because continuing it will only damage you both. Women sometimes try to convince themselves they can change a man in ways they know they shouldn't. You think, maybe if he dresses better, maybe if he loses weight, maybe if time passes, I'll feel differently. But changing people is not love. It is control disguised as hope. If you are trying to make someone into what you wish they were, you're not in love with them. You're in love with their potential. And potential does not build marriages. Potential does not create connection. Potential does not sustain passion. And when you finally accept that something is missing, you're already emotionally attached. And the pain of letting go becomes unbearable. You're not in love. You're addicted to the investment you made. Even Jung spoke of the anima, the inner emotional energy that drives connection. When your anima is starved, when it cannot attach naturally, your body and mind start to revolt. You feel drained, irritated, disconnected, and you don't know why. It's because your soul knows you're forcing something that should have been released long ago. So hear this clearly. If attraction is not present, cut it off early. Not rudely, not harshly, but decisively. Before more time is wasted, before more emotional weight builds, before attachment becomes bondage. Because the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to walk away. The deeper the wound becomes, the more you lose yourself. And the greatest tragedy in dating is not heartbreak. It is self-abandonment. The second moment you need to recognize, the moment that tells you it's time to cut a man off, is when you are only moving forward out of pity. So many women stay with a man not because they want him, not because they see a future, but because they feel bad for him. They don't want to hurt him. They don't want to disappoint him. They don't want to look like the villain in the story. But continuing with someone out of guilt is not kindness. It is emotional self-destruction. Pity can disguise itself as compassion. Guilt can disguise itself as loyalty. But the truth is, when pity becomes the reason you stay, you're stepping into a prison of your own making. You're carrying emotional responsibility that does not belong to you. And here's the truth many women never admit out loud. It feels easier to sacrifice yourself than to face the discomfort of letting someone down. You don't want to be the one who breaks his heart. You don't want to be the reason he cries or feels rejected. You don't want to be judged by others for walking away from a good man. So you stay longer, hoping the situation will magically fix itself. You hope that one day the feelings will grow. You hope that maybe time will change something inside you. But time doesn't fix incompatibility. Time only deepens emotional attachment. And attachment without desire becomes a cage. One of the deepest emotional traps women fall into is believing that because a man hasn't done anything wrong, they have no right to leave. That is the emotional manipulation of guilt, not by him necessarily, but by your own internal conditioning. You tell yourself, he's such a good man. He treats me well. I should appreciate him. Maybe I'm the problem. What if I never find someone better? He doesn't deserve to be hurt. But what about you? Do you not deserve happiness too? Do you not deserve passion? Do you not deserve to choose instead of settle? Women who stay for guilt eventually lose themselves. They lose their identity, their joy, their clarity. They become emotionally numb, unable to discern their own needs because they've been trained to prioritize everyone else's. Carl Jung wrote that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Sometimes the pain of choosing yourself is the doorway to the highest version of who you are. You cannot become whole. You cannot reach individuation while abandoning yourself to protect someone else's feelings. Pity is not love. Guilt is not love. Fear is not love. Love is a mutual choice, not a charity project. And staying for pity carries a dangerous consequence. Resentment. At first you feel guilty for not loving him the way you think you should. Then months or years pass, and you start resenting him for the very things you once tolerated. You resent his calls. You resent his affection. You resent his presence. You resent yourself. You begin living a double life, smiling with your mouth, crying with your soul. And here's the painful irony. The longer you stay out of guilt, the more brutal the ending becomes. Because eventually the truth erupts. When you stay for the wrong reasons, the breakup is never gentle. It's explosive, devastating, and far more painful than if you had left early. Waiting does not make it easier. It only makes it heavier. Women develop what I call emotional debt. the weight of months or years of emotional investment that they feel they must now justify. You poured yourself into someone you weren't even sure about, and now you feel like you must stay to get a return on the investment. But relationships are not stocks. Time invested does not equal a future earned. If your only reason for staying is, I don't want to hurt him, I feel bad leaving, he needs me, then you are no longer in a relationship. You are in a caretaking role. You are mothering a man, not loving him. And if you don't walk away now, eventually life will force you to walk away later, but later will cost more. Let me share something I've seen countless times. Women who stay out of pity end up breaking not just one heart, but two, because eventually they meet someone who awakens feelings they've never experienced, and then everything collapses. Now 2 people are wounded, him and you, and the guilt becomes heavier, not lighter. You cannot save someone by sacrificing yourself. You cannot build happiness on top of guilt. You cannot build a future on emotional obligation. And the moment you notice that pity is driving your decisions, that is the moment you must step back, breathe, and choose yourself. You are not cruel for leaving. You are not selfish for choosing truth. You are not heartless for walking away from someone who is not aligned with you. You are courageous. You are honest. You are protecting both of you from a deeper heartbreak down the road. And hear this clearly. A man who truly respects you will never ask you to stay out of pity. A real man wants to be chosen passionately, not tolerated politely. So if guilt is the glue holding the connection together, it's time to release it, with grace, clarity, and strength. Because the longer you delay what you already know in your soul, the more painful the separation becomes, and the more damage you carry into the next chapter of your life. Never stay where your spirit is shrinking. Never stay where your heart is silent. Never stay where your intuition whispers leave. Your future is waiting on the other side of courage. The next clear sign that it's time to cut a man off in the talking stage is when you realize you don't want the same things. You would think this would be the most obvious reason to walk away. But for many women, this is the most ignored and most dangerous. Because emotions cloud logic, hope replaces clarity, attachment overrides truth, and fantasy becomes more powerful than reality. When 2 people do not want the same things, staying becomes an act of self-betrayal. Compatibility is not defined by how much you like each other, how great the chemistry is, or how strong the emotional connection feels. True compatibility is defined by alignment of values, vision, and direction. A relationship cannot thrive when the futures you envision are moving in opposite directions. Love might feel powerful, but it cannot rewrite someone's life plan. You cannot build a shared future with someone who wants a completely different future than you do. Yet so many women fall into the emotional trap of believing he'll change his mind eventually. He just needs time. Once he sees how great we are together, he'll want what I want. Maybe I can convince him. Maybe he's just scared right now. But here's the raw truth. You should not have to convince someone to choose you. You should not have to negotiate your worth. You should not have to earn the love you're giving freely. When a man tells you, I'm not ready for a relationship, I don't want marriage, I'm not looking for anything serious, I don't want kids, I'm not built for commitment, what he is telling you is exactly what he means. Translation: I will take what you offer, but I will not give you what you want. A man who wants you does not speak in confusion. A man who wants you does not leave you guessing. A man who wants you does not delay clarity. Men are only confusing when you're trying to reinterpret what they already made clear. But instead of walking away, many women start negotiating against themselves. You shrink your needs. You soften your boundaries. You silence your voice. You decide, maybe I don't need marriage right now. Maybe kids aren't that important. Maybe I should be patient and wait. And before long, you wake up realizing you built a life around someone else while abandoning your own dreams. This is what Carl Jung meant when he spoke about losing connection to the authentic self. When you trade who you are for who you hope someone else will become. That's when you lose your identity. That's when you fall into emotional self-erasure. That's when you feel empty because your soul knows you are choosing the wrong direction. When a man tells you he doesn't want the same future as you, believe him the first time, because he is being honest. Just not honest in the way you wish he were. Most women aren't confused because they don't know what to do. They're confused because they don't want to accept what they already know. Attachment has a powerful effect on the mind. It creates emotional blindness, a refusal to see reality. Because reality requires pain, you would rather stay hopeful than feel heartbreak, even if that hope is an illusion. But staying in a relationship without alignment does not protect you from pain. It delays and multiplies it. Eventually the day comes when he still doesn't want what you want. And now instead of 1 year of pain, you're facing 5 years. Instead of walking away with dignity, you walk away broken. The tragedy isn't that it ended. The tragedy is that you already knew it wouldn't work, but you stayed anyway. Let me tell you something that might hurt but will free you. A man who wants you for real does not need convincing. He will not ask you to sacrifice your vision. He will not take years to decide. He will not hesitate to claim you. When a man is serious about you, he makes it clear. He communicates consistently. He plans for a future with you. He aligns his actions with his words. He takes steps toward commitment without pressure. He is emotionally available, not emotionally vague. A man who wants you doesn't make you wait in uncertainty. A man who wants you doesn't keep you on standby. A man who wants you doesn't give you someday. He gives you a timeline, not a story. So ask yourself, are you staying because he's the right man? Or are you staying because you're afraid nothing better will come? Are you staying because you genuinely see a future together? Or are you staying because starting over feels exhausting? Fear of starting over is one of the most destructive forces in dating. It keeps women trapped in rooms they've outgrown. It keeps them tied to futures they never wanted. It keeps them emotionally imprisoned because they believe leaving means losing. But the truth is, leaving is sometimes the greatest act of self-love you will ever perform. Walking away is not failure. Walking away is not quitting. Walking away is not weakness. Walking away is choosing alignment over attachment. You cannot force direction. You cannot negotiate destiny. You cannot rewrite someone else's purpose. And the longer you ignore misalignment, the more painful the consequences will be. If your values don't match, if your futures don't align, if your goals clash instead of connect, then the talking stage must end. Because you deserve someone whose future fits yours, not someone whose future requires you to shrink yourself to fit them. Alignment is not something you fight for. Alignment is something that naturally exists. And the man meant for you will not require you to abandon who you are to keep him. The final sign that it's time to cut a man off in the talking stage is when the situation is draining your peace, costing you your identity, and slowly breaking your spirit. Peace is not a luxury in dating. It is a requirement. Your nervous system knows the truth long before your heart is willing to admit it. When something is right for you, you feel calm, grounded, safe, and emotionally open. When something is wrong, your body reacts. You feel anxious instead of excited. You feel confused instead of secure. You feel tense instead of peaceful. You overthink instead of rest. You feel emotionally heavy instead of emotionally lifted. A relationship should not feel like a battlefield where you're constantly fighting for clarity, fighting to be seen or fighting to be chosen. Love should never feel like something you have to earn. When a connection is right, it brings ease, not exhaustion. It brings stability, not chaos. It brings clarity, not confusion. And confusion is not love. Confusion is a sign. When being with someone costs you your peace, that is your soul trying to get your attention. When every day feels like emotional survival instead of emotional fulfillment, something is wrong. When you feel yourself shrinking, dimming your light, lowering your voice, silencing your needs, that is not love, that is self-abandonment. Too many women try to hold on to something that is slowly destroying them. You start monitoring your words, worrying about his reactions, wondering if you're enough. You lose sleep waiting for messages, waiting for commitment, waiting for consistency. You sacrifice your dreams, your hobbies, your friendships, and even your health trying to make something work that was never meant to last. And what begins as love turns into anxiety. What begins as excitement becomes emotional exhaustion. What begins as hope becomes heartbreak in slow motion. Relationships are not supposed to drain you. They are supposed to nourish you. They are supposed to help you grow, expand, and feel seen. They should add to your life, not consume it. Carl Jung said that when we deny who we truly are, the shadow begins to take control. The shadow self is the version you become when you suppress your needs, silence your feelings, and live disconnected from your authentic identity. That is when the relationship stops being partnership and becomes self-destruction. You may not even realize how much of yourself you've lost until you walk away and finally feel oxygen again. Ask yourself, who did I become while trying to keep him? Did I abandon my own needs to meet his? Did I lose my voice trying not to upset him? Did I stop loving myself trying to be loved by him? Did I shrink so he could feel bigger? If a relationship is killing your peace, it is killing your future, because peace is the foundation of emotional health. You cannot build anything meaningful on top of emotional chaos. And here's the most painful truth many avoid facing. Sometimes the damage done by staying is greater than the pain of leaving. Leaving hurts, but staying in the wrong place destroys. Leaving requires strength, but staying too long drains it. Leaving breaks your heart, but staying breaks your spirit. And once your spirit is broken, recovering becomes a long journey. Stop believing that love requires suffering. Stop believing that proving yourself will make someone value you more. Stop believing that enduring pain is what makes love real. Love is not supposed to hurt you more than it heals you. A relationship that requires you to sacrifice. Your peace is a relationship that is already costing you far too much. The price is too high. You are not meant to be exhausted, anxious, and afraid while trying to hold on to a connection. You are not meant to lose your identity for someone who cannot appreciate your worth. You are not meant to fight alone while he watches you bleed emotionally. Real love is reciprocal. Real love chooses you back. Real love protects your heart instead of breaking it. Real love brings peace that settles your soul. And if peace is absent, that is your answer.